Ayahuasca. It's a traditionally brewed tea made from plants found in the Amazon. The leaves of a bush supply the hallucinogen, DMT, dimethyltryptamine, and the bark of a vine supplies the catalyst that makes the DMT potent. DMT doesn't do much on its own. It's the blending of portions of the two plants that makes ayahuasca. Plant itself is illegal to possess in Canada and much of the world. DMT is a Schedule 3 substance in Canada, meaning that it's a criminal offense to have it, to sell it, to distribute it, either in the plant itself or in any synthesized form. It's also a restricted chemical under Part J of the Food and Drug Regulations. That means Health Canada considers it to have no medical benefit, but researchers can apply to possess it for research purposes. Once brewed, the drink can induce visions. It can also draw out intense emotions and memories. It was traditionally used in spiritual rituals, but in the last few decades, it's also been used for healing purposes and recreationally. A shaman or other spiritual leader typically administers the drink, along with other traditional rituals like the singing of sacred songs or tobacco smudging. There are only a few scientific studies relating to the effects of ayahuasca, and there are a lot of personal stories from users about how it impacted them. Doctors have warned that if a person has mental health problems, they should not use ayahuasca, and no matter their state of health, they should never use it alone. There are a long list of medications and illicit drugs that can be dangerous if mixed with the use of ayahuasca. Even consuming some foods are contraindicated. There have been serious injury, illness, assaults, and even a lot of deaths related to its use, but because of the illegal nature of it in most countries and the remote, unregulated use of it in others, accurate statistics about the relative risk of using the beverage are just not yet possible. Similar drugs like ibogaine, found in a shrub that grows in Africa, also have similar adverse reactions and need much further study. There are some early studies that suggest that ayahuasca may be useful to treat some mental health conditions and some addictions, but those studies are still very early. One gold standard study, a randomized placebo-controlled trial, supports the idea that ayahuasca can be used in appropriate settings and controlled dosages to help treat otherwise treatment-resistant depression. The good news is that ayahuasca is currently undergoing quite a bit of scientific study, and so its benefits, risks, and side effects should soon be much better understood. People who travel to use the drug should be aware that these ceremonies often take place in remote areas that have no access to medical facilities, mental health facilities, or even quick access to authorities. Often there is little monitoring of ayahuasca usage and different plants that may be used in concocting the brew, apart from the vine and the DMT-bearing leaves. Those may be toxic or even fatal to some people. All of these things increase the risk of using the drug. In 2015, Jennifer Logan died of a pulmonary edema after drinking tobacco tea in Peru. It's not ayahuasca, but some of the side effects are the same. The tea was meant to make her purge or vomit, and she simply did not stop vomiting. It's not known how much of the edema, if any, was caused by the tea. But staff at the retreat she was at had to take her by motorcycle and then boat to a hospital, demonstrating just how distant medical help was for her. In 2015, a Canadian man, Joshua Andrew Freeman Stevens, who was 29 at the time, killed a British man, Eunice Gomez, who was 26, after the two men took ayahuasca together at a ceremony at an alternative health center near Iquitos in Peru. Witnesses said that Gomez attacked Stevens with a knife during the ceremony, and the Winnipeg man was eventually freed from custody. In 2012, an 18-year-old American man, Kyle Nolan, died during a remote ayahuasca retreat and he was buried by the shaman who led the ceremony in an alleged attempt to cover up the death. In 2015, Australian Matthew Dawson Clark died in Peru after taking tobacco tea to prepare for an ayahuasca ceremony. Allegedly, other tourists and not staff at the retreat he was at tried to get him to hospital after he became ill. And then in probably the most infamous case related to ayahuasca, Olivia Arevalo, who was a highly respected elder in a very small village, Victoria Graza, deep within the jungles of Peru, was shot to death. The loss of the revered healer fueled grief and anger among the villagers. In those first days after her death, news reports in the West would say she was killed by an unknown assailant. Shortly after her killing, wanted posters would go up for 41-year-old Sebastian Paul Woodruff from Canada. Se busca, the posters read, or wanted. Olivia's son had prepared the posters. Villagers would locate Woodruff, and within hours he was lynched while the crowd looked on, some recording the lynching. The media would immediately begin describing Woodruff as a gentle soul who was merely traveling in South America to pursue a path of enlightenment, a dream of working as a healer who uses ayahuasca. While they jumped to his defense, they also tried to warn others about jumping to conclusions about what happened to Olivia, a little wanting the cake while eating it there. They claimed that tensions had run high in the months prior to Olivia's death between Woodruff and Olivia's son, because the son allegedly owed Woodruff thousands of dollars. Olivia was not only a shaman and healer, but she was an indigenous right defender and an environmental defender. She practiced singing medicine. She was a knowledge keeper for her people. The loss of the elder was a massive loss to the community. She was 81 when she was shot dead outside her home. The shooter then fled on a motorcycle. The motive may have been a dispute over money, or it may have been a dispute over ayahuasca, and Olivia's refusal to allow Woodruff to participate in an ayahuasca ceremony. Investigators were looking at both hypotheses. Woodruff had been acting in ways that concerned the villagers more and more in the months before Olivia died, and by all accounts, Woodruff never had enough cash. He was never flush enough to have made large loans to Olivia's son. He, in fact, was constantly seeking cash himself. In reality, tourists seeking ayahuasca in Peru were invading a desperately poor region of the world, where most of the tourists had little to no understanding of the people, the culture, the traditions, and the potential risks. After Peruvian authorities recovered Woodruff's remains, Peruvian prosecutors would say that he had purchased a handgun from a Peruvian policeman. That handgun, they would say, was the one used to kill Olivia, the same one that dropped from Woodruff's backpack and was later found by authorities. There was gunpowder on Woodruff's clothes and his hands as well, said prosecutors. They would say that Woodruff was indeed responsible for Olivia's death. Olivia's murder came among the murder of at least 4 other activists suspected to have been committed by loggers and drug dealers, a situation which already had tensions in the remote areas of Peru running very, very high. And that is not to excuse vigilantism. Neither did the Peruvian authorities excuse vigilantism. They sought 4 men: Fidel Arevalo Mori, River Gilberto Rojas, Jose Ramirez Rodriguez, and Nicolas Morin Guimaras, for the lynching. As of 2018, according to Peruvian court documents, warrants for detention had issued against Rodriguez and Guimaras. It's unclear what has happened to them since then, but it appears that they have not been arrested and put to trial. When the full picture of what happened, including Woodruff's involvement, began to emerge, suddenly there was little to no further media coverage in the West. That is, until the CBC did an in-depth investigation of the matter, The article is called Descent into Darkness, and I'll put a link in the description for those who want to learn more. The investigation would reveal that Woodruff had antipsychotic and anti-anxiety medications with him, that several witnesses knew of a rift between Woodruff and the Arevalo family, of a lengthy list of bizarre behaviors exhibited by Woodruff, and of Olivia's refusal to even hold ayahuasca ceremonies. Thank you for listening. If you're enjoying these videos and want more, don't forget to subscribe and turn on your notifications so that you don't miss any videos. Thank you for watching. We really appreciate it.